Do you think that any one of the four candidates that I mentioned is out before New Hampshire, Hogan Gidley?
Ooh.
So we're
That's
talking,
the right answer.
Just so we're clear for everyone who's listening, I mean, obviously Trump's in. Then we got DeSantis, Haley, Ramaswamy, and Christie. Do any of the four not named Trump drop out before New Hampshire, Hogan Gidley?
The only one would be Vivek, because Christie's putting all of his eggs in New Hampshire. So, Nikki is counting on her home state to be her Waterloo. And of course, DeSantis, I say DeSantis, if he finishes third in Iowa, I bet he gets out too.
Yeah. Lindsay?
I say no, because New Hampshire is so quickly after Iowa. I think that they'll try to just do everything they can to stay in until into New Hampshire.
Tony Katz.
I think that's right. You make a very good point about if DeSantis finishes third in Iowa. I get that logically. I just don't think they'll do it. I think they know they're not going to do well in New Hampshire. I wouldn't be surprised if they wait to see if they have some value in South Carolina, which is going to be tough enough for them.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. I'm gonna do my John McLaughlin impression, and if you don't know who that is, Google it. I'm gonna go wrong. The answer is DeSantis. I think here's my answer. If Hogan hits on something, if he does not do well in Iowa, he's going to drop out because he still is young enough that he's got a future political career. He's still governor of Florida. If he gets his butt spanked in Iowa and then goes on to New Hampshire and equally gets killed, he's coming back to Florida and not able to run for dog catcher, right? I mean, my point is that at some point you make up an excuse, say, I'm going to go back to my and govern and do all this stuff in Tallahassee. But if he gets embarrassed in Iowa, he cannot afford to get embarrassed twice and expect to live on in the future. The last thing I want to ask about in Iowa before we turn to the DeSantis campaign specifically is there were a bunch of endorsements this week. So you got DeSantis getting Kim Reynolds, a very popular Republican governor, and he got Bob Vander Plaats, the CEO of the evangelical group, the Family Leader. Then on the flip side, Nikki Haley got the backing of the Koch-backed Americans for Prosperity, which is going to be mail, ground game, advertising. Around the horn, Hogan, I'll start with you again. What do you think the impact of any and all those endorsements does to the race, if anything at all? And I want you what one do you think mattered, if any?
Typically, I say endorsements don't matter, but in a state like Iowa, when you have Kim Reynolds, who's very popular there, when you have Bob Vander Plaats, who has a pretty big organization statewide, that's drawn some serious victories, mobilizing the evangelicals, that's going to be important for DeSantis for that ground game, because caucuses are about turning people out. Doesn't mean he wins, but I'm just saying that's significant for him. The Nikki Haley piece, talk about your all-time biggest meh moments, because she got the Koch brothers in today's GOP. It doesn't make you receive praise. It kind of turns you into a pariah, because no one wants to talk about the globalist, elitist, corporatist groups like the Koch brothers going with someone like Nikki Haley, who seems to have embraced that neocon lane of this race. I think she's in a position that is not just untenable, but is very unpopular with the GOP base. It's going to be hard for her to use that, other than the money, which is great.
Right. So Lindsay, I want to put the same question to you, but here's what I would caveat it on. I agree with Hogan's assessment to some degree, but it's not like they're running around saying we endorse Nikki Haley. They're just going to spend a ton of money supporting her. Most voters probably won't even know that it's AFP that's backing her.
But the base knows.
Okay, fair enough. But my question is, and I think the base, the people who it matters to already have made up their mind. But Lindsay Keith, same question to you. What, if any, of these endorsements matter?
So I actually think the Kim Reynolds one and Bob Vander Plaats are the biggest ones for DeSantis. I don't know if it'll make him win Iowa, but it'll get him, I think, very close. If you look at Vander Plaats, the last people he's endorsed have won Iowa. So that is such an evangelical state. And I think that really matters. And Kim Reynolds is more popular than Trump in her own state. So I really think that I would actually be surprised if he doesn't compete highly with Trump or win the state, but up in the air. As far as the Koch brothers, I actually agree kind of with both of you, Sean, and Hogan. I think to people that know, it's a little bit of a turnoff, but that's not really what matters to her right now, to Nikki Haley. She is trying to, I think, pull over some of those swing voters and get them on her side. She knows that she needs to work on the base later, but I think that it'll give her momentum and allow her to be in the race longer because, to your point, Sean, that money, and she needs that to continue to have that strength. And she is on an upward trajectory, and you have Ron DeSantis is on a downward trajectory. And so I think that just boosts her even more.
Yeah. Tony Katz, same question to you.
So the trajectory part doesn't matter if Vanderplatz turns people out to caucus, and the whole difference between caucus states and primary states and the amount of work that it takes. That's why all the polling regarding President Trump, it's there. I'm not going to deny that it exists, but does that translate into people sitting in a high school gymnasium and moving around like pieces on a Monopoly board and caucusing for you? So that's the question. I do think the Vanderplatz endorsement certainly helps. I don't think I'd give a good answer regarding Kim Reynolds. As for the AFP side, and full disclosure, I've done a ton of work with Americans for Prosperity. They sponsor my video series on Rumble, search Tony Katz. Right now, I was blown away by the Nikki Haley endorsement because I didn't understand why they did it. This is, AFP deals a tremendous amount with the grassroots and the activists. And I don't think they're there for Nikki Haley. And I think for a lot of people, there was a lot of, wait, I'm sorry, what have you done? Never mind that they picked Nikki Haley. They picked somebody in general. I think it was Axios or one of the others who stated that through their reporting that AFP has gotten more blowback from this than anything they've ever done, which is kind of a telling statement. Yeah. I think it's interesting to hear you guys, Hogan and Lindsay, say that you don't think it's going to mean anything. You talk about the base. It's not going to mean anything outside of it. I question now whether AFP is asking itself, was getting in this the best move? And was this more of an organizational conversation? Was this more of a Charles conversation? I think on a policy conversation, I think they do a lot of good work, and certainly they were helpful in my Indiana in bringing down cigar taxes and things like that. I'm a cigar guy, so I appreciate it greatly. But it was really a very, very weird thing to see happen.
But Tony, what is? I think what you've said seems to complement what Lindsay and Hogan both said. So because they were, and I agree with them. I think the Vanderplatz endorsement matters because of what you said about caucuses. Bob Vanderplatz was on the show a week ago, if people want to go search it. And I've been to the Iowa caucuses. When you're sitting in, it might be somebody's house. It could be a gym. It could be a church, a VFW, an American Legion, for hours, moving around, listening to speeches, being very public about who you're with. And the Vanderplatz organization has real heft. And it's people who have been in Iowa for a while. So I do think that can matter big time. But what is it? I'm still trying to figure out, are you disagreeing with the AFP? Like, I get your point about the blowback, but I think that seems to agree. I would state
that look, if Nikki Haley was the nominee, I'd vote for her over Joe Biden. I would also vote for Ron DeSantis. I'd also vote for Donald Trump over Joe Biden. I say that here without any bit of equivocation. But I think the question was, why are you endorsing to begin with? What was the point here? Did they do some level of polling and decide that Nikki Haley is the best shot against Joe Biden, which we've seen in some polls? Did they say we just can't handle 4 more years of Trump, and so therefore the motivation was different? I don't think that there was enough of an explanation, and certainly I don't think connected with the activist class that is so much a part of AFP all across the country, that I don't know if it's going to move the needle. I don't know if it's going to bring more people to her side, but I think for AFP, it put them in my view, outsider looking in, it put them in the spot of, why did you make this move to begin with? I don't know where their win is.